Welcome to Text on Text. This is Jed Sundwall. This month, we talked to JB about the movie Sneakers. This is a fun conversation. It goes way off the rails, as these are always intended to do. Sneakers is a great movie to rewatch if you're, my age, born in 1978, or if you remember the movie, if you've heard of it, if you saw it, going back and rewatching it is really great. It's a beautiful movie in the sense it's just of an era when movies were made differently and they were written differently, and it's a real treat. But it covers some amazing ground and just barely scratches the surface, but opens up, I think, a really great conversation. JB is an old friend. As you'll see, we get along. We've been getting along for a really long time, and it's just a fun, fast-paced conversation. So I hope you have fun. See you on the other side. All right. Welcome to Text on Text, JB.
Jed.
So good to have you here.
Yes, thank you for letting me join you after all these years.
Yes, I've so many years. So for the audience's benefit, in fact, I'm going to turn my volume way down because I think
am I loud or am I too soft?
I don't think so, but I don't know. I've had issues with audio. I apologize to people.
Actually,
okay.
Maybe it's because I don't have headphones.
We'll see how it goes. But anyway, JB, we go way back.
Way back.
I mean, really, to 96. When I start my freshman year at the University of Utah. Balaf Hall, rest in peace. It doesn't exist anymore, to my knowledge.
Neither does the parking lot Balaf Hall used to sit on.
Yeah. But anyway, it's we're old men. Yeah. How long ago is 1996? 30 years.
Yeah, we have been friends 30 years this year.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, well, despite us going back 3 decades, for us to proceed here, I have to ask you if you're a technologist. I
am a form of a technologist. I work with 2 AI products right now as a I guess you'd call a co-founder, helping them get off the ground. One is a federated data product, which is really nice because the technology is basically federating the data through what's called the data elements matrix, a DEM. We're able to convert the raw data into anonymized statistical representations. So we do a lot of rare disease work, and the nice thing is you can leave the data in wherever it is and do the analysis on the statistical representation, right? So that's valuable in that globally you can we're completely privacy, HIPAA and GDPR and those kinds of things. So the nice thing is you can unlock this very siloed data, and instead of having these very small studies with smaller patient populations, you can aggregate, bring all the data into a larger pool and use it for better analysis. So one of the products I work with, one of the services is federated data. The second one is and where you and I mean, we had always connected and talked about the family and saw how each other were doing, but the geospatial geomapping AI product that I have, where we can we can look at micro scale pedestrian environmental features, determine, instead of doing very long, arduous processes, we can do it all via AI, right? And map to where all these features are and determine where your sidewalks, where your curb cuts, where are your crosswalks. So it saves you from having to do that manual tracking that you used to have to do in traffic and heat and dogs barking and that kind of thing. So,
all right.
So I guess for lack of a better term, I am a technologist.
You may proceed.
Thank you. And you and I both know I come from a very different. I feel like technology is really, really important, but we don't have a lot of people who bring technology to people who don't understand technology. And that's where I really like my role is I enjoy it started from when watch baseball, and I would go, these statistics make a lot of sense. And I would go tell other people, and they would say, what are you talking about? What the heck is a war or a VORP or all these kinds of things? I'm like, well, it's
Right.
just this. It means this. And people go, oh, well, why don't they say that part instead of all this other stuff? So I consider myself very lucky that I'm in positions where I can bring technology to people and try to make it make sense
Yeah.
across the aisle, for lack of a better term.
I
So,
love it. No, that's,
yeah.
I mean, that's very much what this whole thing is about. I mean, is it's so crazy. I mean, okay, so we're going to talk about sneakers today, and we can get into it. But I just like to kind of foreshadow software. There's, I forget who it was, Mark Andreessen, who says, software is eating the world.
Yeah.
In March 2026, like we're we are. I don't know. I see the tsunami of like a massive, like multiple orders of magnitude more software in our lives. Like it's software is going to mediate, code is going to mediate like everything that we do because of AI, because it makes it so much cheaper to produce
Yeah.
working code. And I mean, to the point that like, people don't even know that they're producing working code. And anyway, we can go all the way back to the future in 1993, and
I have a lot of
yeah,
topics that I think you and I will cover. I have some
yeah,
thematic existential questions, right? Because when I was going over the movie, I was reading Heidegger and Foucault and thinking
Phew.
about panopticons, and right, because
Yeah, okay, yeah,
so much of this is about, our do we recognize the the box that we live in now? To your point, do we
yeah,
recognize that everything is software and every piece of data that we provide is collected somewhere, whether it's your devices in your home or the phone that you use, right? Like, our
yeah,
data is everywhere. And in many ways, I think about, so for those of you listening, I'm a conversation, enemy of the state, like Matrix. These are all kinds of films that I think end up into this sneakers bundle of, what did we think about in the 70s, 80s, and 90s about privacy and, data? And all of these films are very much topical of, how much do we now take for granted that these films tried to inform us about and I'm not a harbinger, right? Like, I think data is really important. I think technology is crucial because it's going to advance us into better cancer outcomes, better treatments for rare disease, right? Safer environments and neighborhoods. So
yeah,
I'm not a pessimist, but
yeah.
I do think we are not as aware and not given the transparency and ethics that I think potentially should be out there. Anyway, that's not in the movie, but
Well, no, it is. No, this movie is such a cool jumping off point to these conversations, though. Like, it does. No, you're right. It doesn't go that deep, but like, man, there's some moments in it where you're like, dang, these guys really. Whoever wrote this, which I didn't pay attention to, like, was very prescient. So
well, and it was a
yeah.
10-year script, and that's what's so interesting about it, is it passed hands between these three gentlemen, and then Phil Alden Robinson, who directed Field of Dreams, ended up helping write a lot of it. So, and Phil has done some interviews with the Spy Hards podcast, and I really like his setup, because he's very much the, I want my directing to not ruin my writing. And
Okay.
you can
Interesting.
tell his direction is very centered on, I want this. He says one of the biggest frustrations is that people think his plot was too simple. And
Yeah.
I think you and
Yeah.
I think about that and go, there's nothing simple about this plot in this
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
It's breezy because all the characters are great, and everything flows along. Right? So,
Right. Okay.
uh,
So the 1993 American film Sneakers.
so
1993, right?
two,
That
two.
1992. Okay.
I,
Crazy.
I
So,
thought it was 92. Yes.
all right,
Um,
keep it up. Okay, so recap it.
so movie starts with Robert Redford. And side note, we had a list of people who were considered sexy across multiple generations, and I think
Oh yeah.
the list we kind of ended up on is Robert Redford, Tom Selleck, you know, maybe Brad Pitt, Paul Rudd, sort of
Yeah.
gaining on, but Redford and
Yeah.
Tom Selleck are kind of these icons of
Yeah.
handsomeness, right? So, and Robert Redford wasn't originally set up to do this movie. He read the script and came in later, and they were like,
Ah,
changed the whole film because then Poitier wanted to do it. He and River Phoenix had worked on a movie together. Dan Aykroyd, you know, had wanted to be Ben Kingsley's role, and they were like, "Oh, well, we want to have Ben Kingsley do it." And he goes, "Well, okay, I'll be Mother. It's fine." David Strathern, who is one of the best actors that nobody talks about, came on as Whistler, and they said the reason they gave him the role is because he kind of he didn't present like it's an interesting story about how he presented himself,
yeah.
um, kind of understanding environments and what he felt it meant to be a blind actor in this role. So incredible cast. But the movie starts with them basically socially engineering, physically intruding into a bank,
Yeah.
which I think is one of the premises you and I need to talk about this movie in that privacy isn't just people are grabbing my bank account anymore. It's still very socially engineered
Oh, yeah.
how these things happen. So they break into this bank, they take a bunch of money. He goes to the head of the bank, says this is where your weaknesses are. They pay him. The lady comes out and says, "What do you? Is this what you do for a living?" He says, "Yes." And she goes, "It's not a very good one." And I think that's wrong. Lady in this movie, this is a very good way to make a living protecting people from privacy breaches.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
I'm
they
with you.
are someone from the NSA comes to them and says, "We know who you are," because they had tried to break into all of these financial institutions, move money to groups that didn't need it. Cosmo, his friend, got caught. He did not. So the NSA comes and says, "You will go find this black box that has all these infinite code breaks on it,
Yeah.
uh, or we will expose you, even though you tried to hide for all these years." He
Yeah.
has this little team of people who help him out. Mother, who is the conspiracy person, River Phoenix, who's kind of the break and enter,
Yeah.
Whistler, who's the right. So they have this ragtag group of people. They go grab the box, find out that they're not the NSA. These guys kill the scientist. They kill his Russian friend, frame him for it. Turns out they were working for his old buddy, and I love when movies do this because in my other podcast we just talked about Batman Begins, where it's like an hour before he actually becomes Batman in the movie, the Nolan version. It's an hour before you see Ben Kingsley. All of a sudden, Ben Kingsley shows up, and you're like, "How did they get Ben Kingsley?"
Right.
So he shows up. He's like, "I'm the one who wanted the box because I want to keep doing this, right? I want us to
Right.
continue to take from the rich and give to the poor, even though is that really what he wants to do?" So then it
Yeah.
becomes kind of a reverse heist where they have to then go back and get the box back
Right.
from Stephen Tobolowsky and his walking puppy and his passport.
So good.
Um,
So good.
and then they get the box. Cosmo stops him. Um, he says, "I thought you wanted to do this with me. There's a couple parts that I want to ask your opinion about in that scene." They take the box back. James Earl Jones is waiting. He says, "Robert, I'm your father. Hand me the box." And he says, "No." And James Earl Jones cuts off his hand and takes the box. That's a different
Love
movie.
that part. Yeah. Yeah.
And they all make deals. They give him the box, but they don't really give him the box. They keep the chip out
Right.
of the box.
Yeah.
Um, and its simplicity is complex and enjoyable. One of the five most enjoyable movies I watch on a regular basis. But yeah, it's all about cryptography and you know who wants to spy on who and who wants to control the information. And I think you have some notes. I have some notes. Why don't you
Sure.
start with your notes, and then I want to pick your brain about a couple of the themes of this
Yeah.
movie.
I mean, so to your point, like the movie, it's such an interesting time to make a movie like this, like 1992. Like the internet is absolutely a thing. The World Wide Web is not. Like so still computers are like a part of our life. I mean, I've my life story is like we got a Mac when I was five or
Yeah.
six, and so like I was always into computers. I'm pretty sure at this time I was on CompuServe or AOL or some other kind of Prodigy. Like there's bulletin boards. I mean, there were ways for that people were connecting online.
Yeah.
I don't know what the status of Wired magazine was, but
Nintendo
probably
Power still strong.
yeah.
Yeah, Nintendo
Okay.
Power is still very prevalent. Yeah,
Okay. But like, so the computers were exciting. I mean, so to me, as a 14-year-old at this time, like I was very into computers and like was into it. I remember really liking this movie. I'm pretty sure I saw it in the theater. I remember
correct.
thinking it was funny and interesting. And it's so interesting to go back and look at it and just and sort of see what computers were like and like, even, you know, GUIs, like, graphical user interfaces were not standard, like people are still using like weird command line type stuff or like, DOSy things.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's such a cool time capsule of that era. And also with the cast. I mean, it's so crazy. It's like one of River Phoenix's last movies. Sidney Poitier is in it. It's like, okay.
What I
like,
mean, you look at this casting, you're going, these are people who've been in what 20 of my 25 favorite movies of all time, and they're somehow all wedged into one movie,
yeah, it's
right?
very weird that they're all in it. But it also feels like, was this, and I know this isn't true, but like this has got to be kind of like the beginning of the end for most of them. Um, like I don't know how much, you
Well,
know,
I mean,
I mean
River,
Kingsley's done tons of stuff ever since then, but
I mean,
like
they all sort of still did great things, but maybe not in a character driven context like
yeah,
this.
kind of sundowning a little bit. I mean, I just sort of yeah, like Robert Redford, like I don't know
He
how many
went,
other sort
he
of
went and
like
did Spy Game, which is funny that he later did that after
okay,
this kind of film, right?
let
So
true. Well, actually, let's just say this: I wasn't keeping up with them. I would say I think this was probably a lot of people's introduction to Stephen Tobolowsky, if not Groundhog Day, which I
Groundhog
don't
Day
know
and this one, yeah,
when did Groundhog Day come out?
Groundhog
Do you
Day
know?
was before because I think if people when he saw the script, he was like, "Why would I do this?" And then he read it, and he goes, "Well, I can't wait to do this." And they're like, "But you did Groundhog Day," and he goes, "Are you kidding? I can do whatever I want in these scenes." And
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh no, I just
and
looked. No, Groundhog Day is 1993. So like
oh, it was
this
after.
was
I thought they filmed
so
it before.
I just looked it up. I mean,
Good for you.
so any case, like breakout star. I love him so much, and he's so good in this movie. But anyway, let me bring it back. Like
Yeah, sure.
the remarkable thing about this movie is like to your point, it's extremely simplistic. It's like there's a box. It can decrypt anything. What happens if you can decrypt anything? Like what happens if somebody develops that capability? And it opens up tons of insane ideas that the movie just like kind of like hints at. It never goes too deep on like what the implications of this are.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to watch it today. So back over to you. I mean,
Well, I think you
yeah.
raised a point that Phil Alden raised, which is he goes, I wanted to highlight the low tech so it always felt relevant, is sort of what he implied. And I think
Okay.
if you go back through this film, they didn't really highlight a lot of the tech in the sense
Yeah.
of like I couldn't pick out which computers they were using, right? They didn't brand them. You had the Panasonic cameras, you had the Sony microphone, I think, but all of the
Hmm.
tech was very subtle. And I think it's because he wanted to focus on the theme, which was this
Yeah.
photography, this cat. And again, I don't like the word hacker is never used in this film. The
Yeah.
word None of those words are used because I don't think the film is supposed to be about the cryptography and the hacking. It's about
Yeah.
the ramifications of those things, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
the Ben, I think Ben Kingsley's character is probably the centerpiece of
Y-
what do we do with technology,
Yes.
right?
Okay.
So,
We,
um,
let's talk about Ben Kingsley real quick though. We got to get this out of the way.
because you love his accent, that's why I remember.
Oh,
I've heard no end to your love of the accent in this.
I was just like shocked by it. Because look, I wasn't as sophisticated in 1992 when I saw this movie to know like how bad this was. But it's like, so he's supposed to be some kid from Boston that
Yeah,
gets locked up for most of
yeah,
his life.
yeah. He's like
But
Italian.
like, that's, yeah. So he's the kid who takes the fall with his hacker friend in the 60s
Yeah,
and then
breaking
is
into
in
art,
jail.
whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
and then, well, oh, hang on. What did he went into ARPA or DARPA or whatever?
Well, what was he trying to do? Um,
They're breaking into banks. I mean, I think they were just like transferring money out of.
yeah, I thought they. Well, it was the second time when they get into like the flight plans and
Okay.
when they use
Yeah.
Gunter's.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's right.
sorry.
I forget. Yeah. Forget
Yeah,
about like I forget what happens to him after, but like the long story short with Kingsley's character is that he's the one who takes the fall, disappear, like goes to jail. Redford thinks he died in jail or
yeah.
something like that.
He's told he's died in jail, and they were going to have a part in the script where he actually has a funeral, but sneaks out of the coffin, kind of
Oh
thing.
wow,
So he's
interesting.
still alive. But yeah,
Um, so in any case, like, and then he's revealed later, like he's the villain. He's the kind of the guy behind the curtain, and it's Redford, Bishop. His character's name is Bishop. It's Bishop's old friend that he had kind of accidentally betrayed, and he's very mad about it. But he's this Boston townie kid. But really, it's just Ben Kingsley trying to do a Boston accent, and it's like you can't you can't have Ben Kingsley not be Ben Kingsley. Like he's still just Ben Kingsley. Like he's not. He's too poised and like just the way he is. Anyway, and then he at some point he says disaster. It's a disaster
it's a
or something
disaster.
like that.
Yeah, he
It's
does.
it's
It's a
really bad.
disaster. Yeah, yeah.
Speaking of disasters,
Okay.
that accent. Anyway,
so so what we're going to find out at the end of this is it took a 5 out of 5 movie to a 4.75 or 4.5 because of the accent is what you're telling me.
yeah.
the
No,
only,
it
the
was just
only
it was distracting to me.
yeah, the only one who had to have an accent in a film with relatively little, I mean, Gunter had the accent, but
Yeah.
which was very not realistic either. The scientists all have the terrible
It's an
accent.
Eastern European accent. They're just like, can you do a
I feel
European accent?
I feel like there was a note card in the 90s films where it was like, can you do this very terrible stock
Yeah.
set of accents, right? And you just picked one. And
Yeah.
it is interesting that you raise Ben Kingsley in 92, Gandhi in 82, dozens of films that he did since then where he was at this pinnacle, and they get him to put basically a mullet on and do a pretty terrible Boston accent, and he just loves it. Like these
Yeah.
guys all, they say that he and Robert Redford would sit in the makeup chair, and everybody would just gather around them, and they would tell all these stories of doing films in the 70s and 80s, and it's a movie you can tell everybody had a lot of fun, and I think that's probably why I like it so much. I
Yeah.
like so
There is I did feel this watching it that there's kind of like there is an attention to the craft and the
mhm,
film, like the filming itself, like the photography. It just feels very much of an era, and it feels like something I just haven't seen in a long time. It's just sort of the way they used to make movies.
yeah.
There's no CGI. I mean, it's kind of a thing that I don't know if I'm just imagining this, but like you can feel how much stuff is done in post now. Like it's just not the same. And this is like it feels like a very analog movie, which is funny given the subject.
There's a
So
lot of love put into it,
yeah.
and I think one of the other things is I think you always have to look at what they build around it. Like one of my all-time favorite scenes is the Scrabble scene, because you have
Okay.
this very James Horner-ish slow soundtrack where it's building as over here you're checking all of the you're checking all the nodes of the box, and over here you're building this Scrabble tile, and the music's just kind of discovery, nope, nope, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of those scenes, and that's the best one, but there's a lot of those scenes where the music adds to, because I feel like today's movies, to your point, there's always some bum 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 or sound effect or noise,
Yeah.
and this film is very sparse, I think, in a lot of ways with what it does with, I mean, I don't know if a lot of that's because of the Whistler character where sound is at a premium
Right.
in this film, but
Yeah.
I
Whistler's
don't.
Blind, for those of you that this is an all spoilers podcast.
Yeah, so if you have, where have you been? But yeah, it is. I think it is very much a film, a loving to the craft film, but Field of Dreams was as well, so it makes sense with
Yeah.
the director and writing of it.
Okay.
Um,
Well,
you
recommend it. Just everyone should rewatch it. It's so fun to rewatch.
yeah, please.
So
And again, we watched it for some of the tech pieces, and I want to highlight a couple of my favorite
go for it. Yeah.
tech pieces in here. First of all, I want a Winnebago with all the extras, including AM, FM, and CD. So
Yeah.
don't forget Burgundy interior, AM, FM, CD, mandatory in your 1992 Winnebago. Um, I love the anyone know how to defeat an electronic keypad. Don't even joke about that. Those things are impossible. Do you remember when electronic keypads were impossible to break in? Because that is definitely not how electronic keypads are
Yeah.
today, right? Like, there's so many ways you get around them.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
So I love the electronic keypad. I love the old school Panasonic camera that's so big you have to bring leaves to hide it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
They're staking out the was it Playtronics? The
Playtronics, the toy
yeah, yeah,
company. Yeah. I love how he's listening to each room with the giant microphone and he can hear the batteries recharging and
yeah.
the ultrasonic. There's just so many
So
fun.
cool.
Yeah, when they're chasing him through the Playtronics, they show a clip of the blueprints and the cameras, and it's like the old Microsoft PowerPoint rooms where the door can only do this in the, so like all your rooms can either go like that or like that. There's no variance in the
Right.
doorways.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you brought up 1992. I was playing Maelstrom and Mortal Kombat with the guys in Balaf Hall a few years after that. That
Yeah.
was that was what I wanted to do with computers. So
Yeah.
this is a pretty big jump for me.
Yeah.
In that. So we can go in order of the film. I think the first thing I wanted to ask you about is it a good job to protect people's privacy? Because that's the one line that bothers me in this movie is the lady's like it's not a very good job to do
Yeah.
what these guys did. And I think in 1992 I was like, yeah, that seems really weird that you would break in and help people. And now in 2026 I'm like, no, that's a job you should actually be doing as part of your bank, right?
Oh,
So
absolutely. I
I
mean,
wanted to get your take on that line and what your thought
yeah.
was.
I mean, I don't know what the appropriate term is for this because I think this phrasing is not okay anymore. Hasn't been for about 5 years, but white hat. Um, you know, like white hat hackers. I think there's a more polite term for it or something like that that doesn't involve colors. But the point being is that like having people that are like that are doing penetration testing all the time and figuring out how to hack into things is absolutely like a good thing to be doing. It is, but is I don't think it's still not regarded as like a noble profession. It's
Mm,
not the kind of thing that people are like, oh, like yes, thank you for doing the Lord's work. I don't know what those conferences are like. I mean, I do, every now and then brush up against like the security industry um online, and it's a weird industry because it is very spy versus spy, like um you have to get in the muck and you have to engage with a lot of, and engage with a lot of bad actors or imagine the behavior of bad actors and really like have your mind in that place all the time. So like yeah, no, it's an awesome job. Like, don't get me wrong, like it's a really good job, but like it's intense, I mean, it's like real you're in the arena doing this kind of stuff. And um I think that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. Like I'm not cut up for it. Like I don't want to go to those conferences. Um and then there's an awesome article years ago. I think it was a New York Times article about the security firm that eBay hired that just went completely
oh,
off the rails in the sense that like well, this is my point is that like this whole world is weird. Like basically some people I'll have to find it. It's awesome. I'll put it in the show
yeah,
notes, but it
please.
was like it was some like some people who'd been built their careers and livelihoods on eBay for some reason got screwed over, like they had their account shut down for some reason. Um I'm completely misremembering these details, but the point is like they started speaking out against eBay. And so eBay is a big corporation. They have like a security firm and this and that.
Yeah.
And it gets muddled in with like the public relations firm and, and everything like this. And they're like, we need to control our reputation. These people are blogging about us and saying mean things like, take them out, kind of thing. But it was
Whoa.
like, so suddenly like this firm that is just like, contracted by eBay, um, just goes completely off the rails, and they have some idiot working for them who starts like stalking this couple that's been, blogging, and it just went way too far. So it's like, yes. So I mean, let's just carry this through. It's like, I work for a bank to protect the bank, and to make sure the bank doesn't get hacked and stuff like that. It's very easy to imagine somebody getting that job and going overboard. And then you're in the position like, who are these noble people protecting our banks? Like, like, am I really going to shed tears for the tremendous work being done to protect Goldman Sachs or like Wells Fargo, these like obviously like gross corporations?
Right.
No. But yeah, so anyway, it's a long answer to your question. It's complicated, like right off the bat. Yeah.
And I think there's layers to it, right? Like you have the people who work for the very small firms who are sending emails saying, "Hey, been an outage. Can you just send me your password so I can reset everything?" Right? And if they send you your
Yeah.
password, like, "No, don't do that. Stop it." Right? Or the
Yeah.
people who walk around when you've left your computer and you walked over there and you didn't lock it. Right?
Right.
So
Right.
you have that layer all the way to, like you're talking about, these very high level, and obviously now so much of it is done with AI, where they're just, you can watch every data stream across your desktop, and if there's anomalies, you can flag it, right? And
Right.
so, yeah, what's the old line? Who watches the watchers, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, because there's
Yeah.
a lot of power in the person who also protects the
Absolutely.
privacy. So, like you said,
Yeah. Well, hold on. I got two things to bring up. One
yeah,
is that, we talked about this on the last episode of the podcast, which was about Silo, or sorry, about wool. There's a show called Silo based on wool, which also, discuss it. It's a book on, one level about a totalitarian regime that controls the flow of information and what happens there. And like, but an issue that came up on that call with Kate Chapman, or that whatever that episode with Kate,
right,
she's like, when you're being like fished, socially engineered by, some call center person, there's absolutely a non-zero chance or like a high likelihood that that person has been trafficked. Like that person's living in some sort of like indentured pseudo slavery situation. And then you're like, well, should you be really mad at that person? It's like, well, I'm very annoyed with this person, but then I feel bad for them. And it's like, it's not their fault. So it gets very hard to figure out who's in power and like who's, who to be really mad at, or it's usually hidden.
yeah.
The other thing is that I did look up the eBay article,
Okay,
and
good.
I have to share this because it's just a teaser to get people to click through the show notes. Not that I care if people click through the show notes, but um, I'm just, this is the first two. This is a great lead. This New York Times article. Last summer, members of eBay's private security team sent live roaches and a bloody pig mask to the home of a suburban Boston couple who published a niche e-commerce newsletter. The harassment campaign, which also included physical surveillance, sending pornographic videos to the couple's neighbors, posting ads inviting sexual partners to the couple's home, and an attempt to attach a tracking device to their car, was detailed earlier this month in a federal indictment against 6
What year is
former
this?
eBay employees. What?
What year is this that they're doing this?
2020.
So this is still, I mean, and we've gone even further with our ability to protect
Oh, dude.
privacy. I mean,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
It's crazy.
That's crazy.
I love this detail. An attempt to to attach a tracking device to their car. Like, is this movie being made, or is just like, you have again some idiot who works for eBay exactly, is like sneaking around and be like, try,
With the like the thing, right? The little scoop thing with the mirror on it where you're trying to hook it under the, yeah.
yes, exactly, yeah, and just
Yeah.
getting caught and being like, oh, and just dropping it and running away. Like,
But not so fast or furious, I think, is how this one. You raise an interesting point though about what you were talking about on your last podcast, and again, when you come on our podcast, which I'm really excited for, um,
yeah,
one of Dr. Allred is a political philosopher professor.
is this
So
one of your
This is
co-hosts
one.
on your podcast?
Yeah.
Okay,
So Andy is he does digital marketing for Sierra Club Politics, and Ammon is
nice.
a political philosopher. So I always I always try to do them justice in going. One of the things I thought was interesting is if when you look at sneakers, you can go into like the Heidegger Foucault surveillance capitalism kind of idea,
Yeah,
and I think it comes from. It reminded me of the podcast you just did, where, and again, those of you listening, if I'm misquoting this or reading this incorrectly, I know, but Heidegger kind of has this technology piece where technology is a framework in that, the end framing is in technology, in an age of technology, everything appears as a standing reserve, right? Something to be optimized and used. And that's where Heidegger says the danger is you can become a world where all you're seen as is a unit of measurement or
yeah,
ingestion or something like that. And then Foucault takes it and says, okay, well, how does the system organize that power? So if
yeah,
everyone's a unit of measurement, Foucault then says, well, what's the dispositif? What's the network that you set up?
yeah,
Hospitals and schools and census systems and all these things. And that's where I think the panopticon comes from, which is his experiment of, if you put prisoners in and you act like they might be watched even though they can't see the guards, how do they behave under a constant surveillance?
yeah,
And I think you think about this, sneakers is sort of opening the door of, okay, and that's the second part I wanted to ask you, which is Ben Kingsley has two incredible lines, and or one incredible line, and Redford has a response. The first line that I want to get your take on is Ben Kingsley saying, obviously, that the power is in the information. It's in the zeros and
yes,
ones. It's no longer in. And I think you and I are probably aligned on this, but I would very much like your take on that because of what I'm going to ask you after that.
sure. So it's actually a great line. This is in my notes.
Good.
It's at the end. It's kind of like this like pinnacle of the movie when Cosmo Kingsley says the world isn't run by weapons anymore or energy or money. It's run by little ones and zeros, little bits of data. It's all just electrons. And then not too long before this, I think when Cosmo and Bishop first like re-encounter each other, I think this is when this exchange happens. And it's some corny writing and directing the back in the way they used to do it. It's like Cosmo's like everything in this world, including money, operates not on reality. And then Bishop says, but the perception of reality. But they're like finishing each other's sentences.
Yeah.
But like, so this is, I talked about this when I was at Yale, a year and a half ago. When I gave this talk called Internet Power, where I make the case that, and again, these are not original ideas. I don't want to say like I'm taking credit for this, but that like this idea of the new sphere, which is a very highfalutin academic term, but like to describe like the sphere or the landscape of like all human consciousness, it is territory to be captured. And like that's what's happening is that people are capturing huge swaths of like human consciousness and changing the perception of reality. And that's what runs the world. And so what's interesting about Cosmo's like big line, the world isn't run by, I'll just say it again, the world isn't run by weapons anymore or energy or money. It's run by little ones and zeros, little bits of data. It's all just electrons. There's something kind of funny about this line that it actually does point to energy. Is it is ones and he's right. It's ones and zeros. It's all just electrons. Electrons are energy. So it is energy. And like we're getting to the point where certainly for geopolitical reasons, like how and where chips are manufactured and who's doing that is supremely important to whatever geopolitics, just power in the world, like who has power in the world, and then also who can afford all the energy that we need to run all this sort of stuff. So yeah, it's an amazing insight that like kudos again to to the writers in 1992 and even before this. But the crazy thing is like all the way back to like Leibniz in like the 1600s who like first recognized that you could encode any information in binary.
Yeah.
Lots of people have been able to see like, oh, I see where this is heading, and it's global domination. And like, I am very into computers, and that is still not intuitive to me. Like, I have to like live through it to see how this actually happens, but it's absolutely true. So, yeah,
Yeah, and I think two parts, and that's kind of where I was going with the Heidegger Foucault, which is, if you capitalize everything and you create a system that sets that, I guess, allows that or monetizes it or justifies it, then you have a system where everything is ready to be capitalized, and then a capitalization system, it happens exactly like you're saying. It becomes a fight for who controls, as Ben Kingsley says, who controls the information, who controls the data. But I want to add a point to yours, which I think is also important. And as an existential person, I think energy also means the energy of what we expend in being okay with not controlling our information. So not only the geopolitical energy, but also our own energy in us just sitting around letting people collect our data, being okay with our data being collected because it allows us to be more, to have convenience, right? And
Right.
I
Yeah.
don't want to say that it lends itself to a very a very low energy, low acting system, but I
Yeah.
think there is something to be said for the energy, not just of the energy of our natural resources and global environment, but the energy within ourselves, to not ask questions, to not look
Yeah.
for truth, to not look for what's good or not good for the earth and for ourselves. And not in any highfalutin way, but
Yeah.
I think a lot of our systems make it really easy for us to not look internally and ask questions and just assume that everybody has our best interests and ethics and transparency in mind. And I
Right.
think that energy is also can be taken for granted when we don't go out into nature and we don't look around and we don't read books, and because
Yeah.
we're just ingesting information that's handed to us.
Yeah.
So
I mean, this is not something that I predicted would be an important, I think, part of this podcast to me,
yeah.
and not that I'm not under no delusion that this podcast is important to anybody other than me. Although I do know, thank you to my listeners. I know you exist. I hear from them every now and then, but like, I'm very happy doing this just for myself. But like, I do think it's absolutely again, we keep using the term highfalutin. I think it's important to keep using it. Is like, I don't want to sound pretentious, like that this is very important to do, but I'd say for me, it's so rewarding to talk to another human about art,
Yeah.
and to talk about like what's happening. And I think, and that the original impetus for this podcast, there were a few ideas that like led to me really wanting to do it. But one of them was realizing, working at Amazon, that I was mostly surrounded by people who had been trained to do what you just said, which is like put the blinders on and think about what matters, to get promoted, and that's
Mhm.
it. And don't
Yeah.
think about any implications. Don't think about what's going to happen to the world if you do this thing, if you build this. And I think engaging with the humanities is such a useful way to do that. And it's so weird now because I really, I'm generally very skeptical, and I don't get caught up in, I resist hype cycles and everything like that. But I do think something very remarkable is happening right now with the large language models. And um I'm just, and so I can imagine a future where we are effectively the pets of these AI overlords. And I'm like, well, what are we going to do with our time? And I'm like, well, why don't I just hang out with my friends and talk about books and movies? That's awesome.
And
I'm happy to do that.
but I think that's
Yeah.
exactly where I'm going with it. Is ever since I was a kid, I had large systems telling me what I should think and what was the best way for me to think and what I was going to get after this because of how I thought, if I thought like that and acted like that.
Yeah.
And I remember when I didn't think like that anymore, I went, oh, I have to develop this whole schema for myself. And I was
Yes.
really lucky to have people in my life, have friends like you know, that gave me extra insight. And you've always been that. I've always told you you're an incredibly valuable person in all of our lives because you do that. You
Stop.
ask us you ask us to think above and beyond the bounds of what maybe traditionally what we're asked to do, right? And I
Yeah.
think a movie like Sneakers is fun and soft and breezy, and I think sometimes when you get when you get to a certain age, you look at it and you go, well, hold on, why was everybody okay just handing this box back? Why was
Yeah.
everybody okay just do, you know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah.
I was remarking, and I'm really fortunate to be on a podcast with very, very smart guys who let me do the same thing, come chat about humanity and life with them.
Yeah. Hold
And
on. Tell
yeah,
tell what is your podcast called? Because
so
I'll
so
link to it
I'm
also.
very fortunate to it's called Ammon and Andy's Excellent Odyssey, and it's a journey. It started years ago when we were talking about, oh, I'm sorry, it's Andy and Ammon's. I got the they're both so important to me that the names can
Okay.
switch, but it is Andy and Ammon's Excellent Odyssey featuring me. Um,
Okay.
and I love it because they had started talking about, do you think Christopher Nolan's going to mess up the Odyssey?
Yeah.
Because we all
Yeah.
hold the Odyssey very dear as a story, as non, as historical, lessons learned and ethics and all that kind of stuff, right? Plus, I think
Yeah.
Athena's the badass of God, so goddesses. So, kudos to her.
Yeah.
Um, but we started the podcast of, okay, well, let's watch old Odyssey movies, let's watch Christopher Nolan movies, let's kind of tie them in and go based on what we're seeing, how is the Odyssey going to pan out? Is Christopher Nolan going to do a good job? And
Right.
in between, we talk a lot about philosophy and
Yeah.
digital marketing and media. And Marshall McLuhan comes up every once in a while, which I know
All the
you and I always talk about a lot.
yeah.
So anyway, that's the other podcast, and
Okay.
they are very much aligned with obviously Dr. Allred as a philosopher. A lot of what we talk about is where did the thinking come from, and do we choose to hold to that thinking, or do we decide to try a different thought or do something different,
Yeah.
right, with how we create and ingest and learn from. And I think that's one of the things I've always noticed is I love watching old movies from the 90s. I will say Defending Your Life is probably my favorite movie for this very reason, which is we don't just take concepts as they are. We think about them. And then, of course, if we find them to be the way they are, then that's fine. But at least you've done the work to
Yeah.
know why you think and choose and act the way you do. And I think
Yeah.
Sneakers is kind of like that. I go back through it and I go, there's a script, but you have all these people with different rationale and motivations, and why are they all choosing to do what they do? Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so and you're really good about doing that, and that's why podcasts like this are so fun, because our texts are historical to why we are the way we are. And
Right.
I think we're
Yeah.
continually incentivized to not pay attention to, I mean, you look behind me, I've got Tolkien and Dostoevsky and Kafka, and right,
Yeah.
because I want to remember where all literature and language and all these things started from.
Right.
uh, Not that those are the three paragon of examples, but you know what I mean. So
Yeah.
I think you're always very good about that similar thematic component of
Yeah.
even the conversation of what is energy to each one of us is a different perspective.
Yeah.
So
No. Well, okay, thanks. I mean, you thank
I
you.
yeah,
You
I
don't
do have
you
go
don't have to
ahead.
talk about how great I am. But I mean,
Yeah,
so the book that, that's always is close at hand, very very much like my Bible, like
fantastic book.
the the
Mm,
patron saint of this podcast is Borges. And because I think what Borges reminds us over and over again is what you just said, which is like he's like, yes, everything about how we see the world comes up from previous ideas that we've just inherited, and also it's all arbitrary, it's completely arbitrary. And so you have to be able to think, you have to try to be able to imagine beyond you know this enclosure that we have.
yeah,
um and yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's an ongoing practice.
it's
So
Borges is great, and I'd love to come on and talk about some of his books with you if you haven't already gotten to them.
oh,
Um,
I will always do Borges episodes, and like over and over again. I've not read everything in ficciones or fictions or whatever. Like, um,
So I would love to
so
read Labyrinths with you. I think
oh,
that's
we can go through.
probably
We
my
can go through the
favorite.
whole thing.
Yeah, I love
Yeah,
that book. Anyway, we'll do that down the road. But
sure.
I think you raise a really interesting component of that. And again, coming from the background I have, to wake up one morning and go, am I just a, an energetic source having an experience and then I'm off to do something else? Like, what am I really valuing if I'm just an infinitesimal speck in universes that are expanding forever and ever and ever and ever? And right, like, am I fighting the right fight? Am I spending the energy on what I need
Yeah,
to be spending it on? And sometimes I catch myself, why am I swearing in traffic if I am if life is nasty and brutishly short?
yeah.
Right? And I think your Borges was right on with that. It's like, in some ways, right, the answer is your own.
The answer is your own,
You do what you do with it.
and right. No, and to your point about like how you use energy, I mean, I think this is like, um, I'm sure you're familiar with Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, the guy who wrote
Mhm.
Flow. I'm
Yeah,
not sure if I'm saying his
yeah.
name right, but like he has this great line in Flow. He's just sort of like the way that we use attention is how we create our lives. Like what we pay attention to is what shapes our life. And I think it's so. I mean, I was journaling about this just the other day for some reason. It just came out of me, but I'm like, I think the news cycles in the media are so, and also our political structure, at least in the United States, are so completely out of whack and cynical that it's just driving people completely insane. We have the choice of immersing ourselves in a media environment that makes us go totally crazy. Many such cases, I see it all the time, and I'm like, you also don't have to do that. That does not mean I'm saying like you just throw your hands up and just like let the government run roughshod over everybody and shoot citizens in the streets. Like I'm not okay with that either. And I think it's appropriate to find ways to protest and obviously vote and figure out ways to steer the ship. But like steeping yourself in of the vast, insane, huge, mysterious world that we live in that has so much in it, to say like, you know what, I'm going to consume constantly and always pay attention to is rage bait. like, I don't think I personally, I think it's a bad choice. So
It's
yeah,
uh, and again, it's you and I very much speak for ourselves, not the houses, right, that we find ourselves under in many cases. But I
yeah,
think I think that the choice you always have is action, right? Like you
yeah,
said, you can do a lot to simmer and stew and do certain things, or you can, like you said, choose the pathway you wish to walk on and
yeah,
take action, right? Like, it goes back to what we talked about, technology. You can do a lot with technology. You can bring disparate pieces of data together or try to make things easier, and you know make places safer, and people easier to access information and education and stuff they need.
yeah.
Or you can just sit and consume whatever they tell you to consume.
Right.
uh,
Yeah. I
Action.
mean, that's how yeah,
Yeah.
that's how I sleep at night. Yeah. I feel like I'm all right. Like I'm trying to do my part. I can be deluded to think that like improving access to data is really going to change the world. I mean, I talk about this a lot. I'm open to the idea that maybe humans don't ever use data to make decisions and that we're wasting our time. That's a real risk. But in any case, like yeah, like I'm trying, and so I'm not trying to like sort of defend my um my existence or anything like that. But like this is just going back to what you're saying, just talking about like the way that we choose to consume energy. Actually, I will put this in the show notes. My wonderful friend, who I love so much, Ankur, who I'm actually going to see tomorrow, he gave a sermon at a Unitarian church. I
Mm.
think it's a Unitarian church a little bit ago, where he talks about how I forget what it was like. It was like how to fight fascism or something like that. And he does this wonderful. This is completely relevant to what we're talking about. he's like, how does reading the news make you feel? And he's like, not usually not pretty good. And he's like, despair is a tool. It's a tool that's used by the powerful to like, to basically deactivate people. To your point, to say like, why
Put your
act?
energy here. Yeah.
Yeah. Just every day remind yourself that like you are powerless to fight this, And so and he's like, so pay attention to how that makes you feel. And he talks and he spends most of the sermon talking about uh a hero of his who's done work, I think, in El Salvador for a long time. And he's like, this guy spends a lot of his time looking at pictures of his whole desk. His like desk and office are all decorated with like Gandhi and Jesus and Martin Luther King, like all of these heroes that came before him. And he's like, he spends a lot of time thinking about those people and his ancestors that shaped the world in the way that he thinks is good. And he's like, you can spend time thinking about that too. Like that's useful. And that's what gives him the inspiration and the groundedness to go serve the people that he's with. And like that's the kind of choice you can make. And again, this all goes back to what you're saying before. It's like, how do we choose to use the limited energy we have, the limited capacity we have to pay attention to things? What are we going to be? What are we going to pay
Yeah.
attention to?
And I think to your point, I don't think this is new. It's people are like, oh, I just woke up to
Yeah,
despair, and I'm like, this is you and I have read McLuhan and all these people for decades. This is not. This is every day for years. The
yeah,
media, the right, like this is how it's always been set up. And I think
yeah,
people, oh well, this last so and so years and times, like no, always it will always be like this. Media is
yeah,
designed to set up however whoever's in charge of the media wants it to be. So
yeah,
it's not like this just happened. And
yeah.
I think
Absolutely. Yeah,
that's what's really important is going back to what we talked about. 1992 was a simpler time, but that's because I was a simpler person. But
right. Yeah,
I
yeah.
think if you go back and look at what was going on, the world was not a very different place. Media was,
Well,
but just because we didn't have access to the media didn't mean all the stuff wasn't still happening. You know what I mean? We're just more able to access what we do with the energy. You know what I mean? Like the world has always had despair. It's just
oh yeah. Well, no, so this is the thing that we're dealing with, and I think we're gonna have to come out of like in a generation or so, is that like so 1992 is a very interesting time because it's still like that's also like early days of cable, I mean, people have written about this, how 24-hour news media, like CNN was in innovation. Here we're getting into McLuhan, right? Like where like suddenly you have 24-hour news that you have to fill up. And you have to sell advertising for all that time. So we suddenly have a medium that's like we need to generate more
we need
news
to
at all times.
manufacture, yeah,
Yeah.
something.
Whereas before it was like no, like you watch like about 45 minutes of news at night, from one of the three big networks. And it's like no, now we get to do 24-hour news, and now we have like many competing outlets that are doing 24-hour news. And now we have the internet and Twitter and everything else that's like it is nonstop. I mean, I did not come up with the term like memetic warfare, where it's like who's creating memes and getting them into people's heads all the time. And we have it, and with mobile devices and satellites and everything like that, like the information, we are so like we're blanketed in sensors that are producing so much information. And so what this leads to is I would consider it's a mass hallucination, or it's at least a delusion that what we're consuming from the internet is an accurate representation of like what's going on in the world. So it's like there's so much more despair, there's so much more, so many more things to worry about. And yet somehow, at least from where I sit, most people seem to be concerned only about like a few conflicts at a time. Like there's like absolutely like there's all sorts of conflicts happening all over the place, but like somehow I'm saying this, I'm like it's mysterious, but like, and I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist or anything like that, but like clearly there's like an operation being run very deliberately to have people be outraged and be despaired about certain things all the time. And I just try to opt out.
Well, and think about,
Yeah.
even take a step back, the nature of reality is like we talked about with Borges, is interpersonal. My reality is very different than your reality. What I see
Yeah.
through my eyes is different than everybody else's because of how information is processed in my history. None of us will ever see the accurate reality that's placed in front of us because everybody is manipulating, manifesting,
Right.
assessing different components. So
Right.
even, and that's I think an important part of what you're talking about energetically is despair is even part and parcel of like different, like every there's different parts of despair and joy and everything's
Yeah.
different. And in some ways I wonder if that's where data is helpful, in that if you could break the zeros and ones down to what is accurate reality, would people go, oh, this isn't really that important? But I don't, again, I think even data is coming in
Yeah.
with perspective and thing. But so there will never be that matrix thing where I can go, okay, if I take this pill, oh, I actually see what reality is, because there's never going to be
No. Yeah.
that sort of thing. So,
Well,
but I like
yeah.
the perspective of I'm going to choose what outrage I have and what joy I have and what I look for. Because I
Yeah.
think that's part of the reason why you do what you do, is to shine a light into what's good and historically valuable and those kinds of
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, but you'd set this off, I think, really well, which is the thing when we think about, this all comes back to the Cosmo quote, like that the world, everything is mediated by, it's the two quotes together. Everything is mediated by the perception of reality, and reality is shaped by these ones and zeros. And so we are at risk of being tricked by what's on our screens, what's being fed to us algorithmically, and we have to choose. We have to use our agency. Again, to go back to what you're saying, you grew up being taught to be a certain way. You're being, given sort of reward functions to behave a certain way and do certain things, and to realize you're like, oh no, like I actually can make choices, to live my life in a different way. I think I think thinking about free will is pretty interesting. But all this to say, though, I was like, I do think it's kind of like it is supremely important that we figure out how to do this for ourselves. To control our own information landscape and recognize when we're being manipulated, which is like all the time.
the time.
It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, and
I,
yeah,
go ahead, and I'll ask you a question after that.
oh sure. Well, no, it's just good to say, like the stated mission of Radiant Earth is to increase shared understanding of our world by improving access to data. And
Yeah.
the reason why we now do two podcasts, I mean, this podcast is kind of like my hobby. It's not whatever, but I'm doing this on the clock. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Is like what you just said about there is no objective reality. So conversation is a very important medium. Also, I think humans talking to humans about stuff. It's obviously very compelling because the podcast sector is huge. People love it. They love to hear conversations. I love having conversations, but like I think conversation as a medium is going to become increasingly important because I spend a lot of my day now talking to LLMs, talking to
Yeah.
non-humans. It's
Yeah.
crazy. And I think that's going to increase.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think
Now
that
you
leads,
can ask me a question. Yeah.
well, that leads me to the question I was going to ask you, because I think the most important line in this film is Cosmo says, he's got the box, and he's like, Marty, think of all the places we can go with this. And Martin looks him dead in the eye and says, yeah, there's no one there. And I think that's the most important line, because I think it goes back to what you and I are talking about. If you talk to LLMs all day,
Yeah.
there's no one there. We have to be careful of the ingestion of all of this data around us, because there's not anyone on the other side of that. Right? There's
Yeah.
the, and that's the real, and I, you read certain things and people kind of poo poo that statement, like, oh yeah, well, of course he's going to say that because he's going to go back and live his, right,
Yeah.
his underpaid life with his buddies, right, like
Yeah.
living in a shed or whatever. And I'm going, no, what he's saying is the overconsumption of data, I think, goes back to the energy piece, is your acceptance that you don't have to worry about anything. You'll let the data take care of it. You won't be an engaged, awake, aware part of the reality. So I wanted
Mm,
to get your take on that statement of the places we can go with this. I've been there,
yeah.
Carl. There's no one there.
Yeah.
You and I play in data all day long.
Yeah.
And I think that's an incredibly important statement for everybody to assess
Yeah.
in that vein.
Yeah. I think, okay.
Because
So,
I knew this would be an interesting one for you because of the two sides of it, right?
yeah. Well, like, okay. I've covered this ground. I know on past episodes where like I do, I for one welcome our AI overlords.
You're very
Like,
Simpson from that, yeah.
yeah, yeah, like, um, in the sense that like, so I had this moment, So we use Claude at work and everything like that, and like I'm setting it up and I'm going through some tutorials and stuff like that, and actually this was happening today, like. We use a service called Ramp to do our expenses. This is not a paid advertisement, but it's awesome. Like it helps a lot.
If
I
you
love
would
it.
like it to be a paid
Yeah.
advertisement, please reach out at the email address in
Yeah.
the
Right. Go to radiant.earth/ramp.
yeah,
You'll get a 404,
yeah,
but it is,
exactly.
um, anyway, but like I'm setting up Claude, also not paid by Claude. And it's like, do you want to connect to Ramp? And I'm like, do you want to give Claude permission to look at all your Ramp stuff? And I'm like, absolutely, I want that. And it's like, do you want Claude to be able to read your emails? I'm like, I want that so much. and like, and it's like, well, that's like a scary thing. It's your privacy and this and that and da da da. And I'm like, I'm done. Like, and I again, there listeners, come at me if there's security people out there who are like, you're an idiot, you're giving all this data to this big tech company. I understand that I'm doing that. And also, I would rather I'm I'd rather jump on board with yet another abstraction layer on top of all the technology we've built that's going to make my life easier so that I can go cook dinner with my family, like and go to and touch grass. So there are two ways to approach this and think about like how do we get the data to work for us and like how do we get these systems running. One is there's the campaigns being run by the for-profit media organizations and social media organizations that they're trying to capture human consciousness and manipulate it at all times. um, I'm trying to improve access to scientific data and lower the cost of like research by orders of magnitude. If I can get systems to work for me to do that well, then I can go spend more time with my family. But
Right.
like, but there's obviously, I mean, to me, the most worrisome thing about technology and what's Cosmo's vision of the perception of reality shaping the world and running the world is just so many people basically being captured and driven crazy. We should do Snow Crash on this podcast too because I think Snow Crash covers that so well as well. So
Yeah, I'm all for that one. If give me some advance notes, we'll do it. I
all
think
right.
I think I am going with. I think you answered the question a safe way, and I don't mean that. I don't mean that in a
Yeah,
bad way. I
yeah,
mean that in a safe way of you recognize where technology gives you value, but
yeah,
you're also not beholden to it in a complete absolution of your mentality, your well-being, your emotional state,
yeah,
right? And again, not that people who do that, that's your choice, and that's
yeah,
what you keep going back to is you choose your reality, you make your choices. I think for me, that is a question that just has to be asked is there isn't, are you prepared for if you hand this over and you absorb yourself in this that there might not be anything at the end? Can you find that venue of I'm going to use this to transparently do something with my life because of it? Like are you saving yourself time? Are you making the world a better
yeah,
place? Are you ingesting it for a reason? whatever your answer is your answer. Neither you or I are judges. Or
Yeah.
I think my question is always, did you ask yourself the question before you either took or handed the box back?
Yeah. I think okay.
You see where I'm going? You see where I'm
Yeah,
going?
yeah, yeah.
Because I
No,
think
it's
that's
a
what
good
I've asked myself with political systems, religious systems, sociocultural system. I've always asked myself, what do I get when I take this?
right, right. Um there is, in Sapiens, Harari does a pretty good job
Mhm.
of, he talks about fictions as well. So he covers this ground of like how like, money is a fiction, right? It's just a thing we've agreed is a way of sharing and exchanging value. But he's like, you can't escape this. Like there's like you can be like, oh, like I'm not an American, like I'm a human. I'm a citizen of the world. Like I don't subscribe to this ethos, of like being subject to this culture. And it's like, well, then what? And he's like, there's no escaping this. Like if you're a human, you're a social creature. Yes, you can become like a total hermit, and yeah, there's nothing there. Like I think that we're approaching a very profound truth that like also the ego itself is an illusion.
Yeah,
So um
ultimately, your own reality. It's yeah, you
yeah,
created it
yeah,
from
I
worldview.
yeah. And so but I think like so instead of going that way, which that's a fun way to go.
If we had more time, we could
Yeah,
go down that rabbit hole, but we held
yeah,
ourselves to a very specific
yes.
time limit. So,
Yeah, we are running out of time.
yeah,
um but there's the other no, but you're right that there's this other illusion that like, oh, I'm going to use this thing and it's going to make me more productive. And it's like, to what end? Like we're just so what I can say this, what large language models have done have created much more content for me to edit and grapple with than I can deal with.
yeah,
And so I already had infinite work and it's compounded that a little bit. And so
infinite times
but
two. It's amazing.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Um and but so what's interesting though about that is that yeah, to I think you've been kind of pushing me here to like this realization that like you have to have a very robust understanding of what it is you really want to do with your time, because you can do kind of anything and you're like, this is too much capacity. I need to limit it by a fully grounded understanding of what it is that I want to offer to the world. Like, that's
that's a,
cool. That's a good challenge to have.
that's a really that's a much more advanced version of I think where I was going. And because I've taught for so many years, I tend to end up in Socratic mode of what are we offering to each other through the conversation. And I think
Yeah.
you do the same thing to me, which is you can do that, but what, like, yeah, ask this question or ask this question, right? You've done that for me every time I've been involved in, whether it's geospatial or just like anything ever since I've
You're
known you.
giving me too much
You
credit.
you should do that, but
Yeah.
do you really want to? And I think
Yeah.
that's where I think the movie makes it a separation of two different ideologies, where I
Yeah.
don't think it's necessarily that clear cut. I don't think it's necessarily about ideology. I think it's a question of there's a world where Martin Bryce joins Cosmo and they do good with the box, at least for a little while.
Yeah.
There's the one where they separate and he go right, like there's an infinite number of endings for that story. But I think
Right.
the fun question for me is always, are you okay with the choice that you make? Did you consciously give yourself the time to go, I think like this for this reason, I believe
Right.
this for this reason? Because it goes back to the ego. How much time do we actually spend understanding if our truths are actually true? Is it
Right.
because parents told us? Is it because our society told us? Is it because someone told us on a date when we were in high school? And we've just always,
Right.
we very rarely assess our truths to understand if they are actually true. And that's, like you said, because our ego is protecting us and sheltering us and holding us. And I
Right.
think sometimes data can do that to us as well. Data can shelter us from the questions we need to ask and the transparency we need to have in ourselves. And I think, again, my takeaway from sneakers is a lot of that, where you can, and if you choose to, that's totally fine. But
Yeah.
make the choice of your own.
Yes, I mean
Um,
this is so I do call this the data delusion all the time, which is
a good, a
the
good one.
delusion that if only I had more information, I would know what to do. And kind of phrased somewhat differently, it's like, um, hold on, it's if only I had the right, if I had more information, I would know what to do, or the idea that like I'm shoot, there's another corollary to it. I use this
But
all the
it,
time.
but
It's like yeah,
an infinite amount of data will allow me to make an infinite amount of correct decisions. And like you just mentioned, it actually does not
no,
do
no,
because
exactly. Like, yeah, it's this idea. It's like I don't have the information I need to make the right decision, and if I had more data, I would know what to do, and that I would do it, and like that's not true. And working in sustainability, I mean, one thing that always trips me up, when I talk to sustainability people, I'm like, I can't. I every time I try to like think hard enough about like the challenges we're talking about. At some point, you get to ask the question, how many humans are allowed to be on the planet? And I'm like, no one gets to answer that question. Like, we don't want to put ourselves in the position where we get to decide, like, this is the right amount of humans. You're over the line, like, yeah. So yeah, so Cosmo's vision of like, imagine all the stuff we could do. It's like, yeah, boy, dude, I don't think you want to do all that stuff. Yeah, I think Borges does a good job of this kind of stuff as well, as sort of kind of like forcing us to imagine infinite information spaces and just how ill-equipped humans are to navigate them.
oh man, I can't wait to talk about labyrinths with you down the road because it's
Okay.
amazing. I want to
All right.
I want to bring up one other point, which
Okay.
I think, and you highlighted it earlier. I want to give you a different term. I think the biggest problem we have in the world is fear, and I don't think all
Yeah.
fear is externally generated. I think we ourselves come in with a little bit of fear, whether it's our ego or how we're raised or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And I look at the characters' decisions in movies and books and things, and I think
Yeah.
Cosmo is very driven to fear with how he makes that decision.
Yeah.
And I think again, data as a very I don't want to say static, but data is just this thing,
Yeah.
right? And I think part of what you and I've talked about this whole podcast is fear dictates what we do with data, reality,
Yeah.
decision making, all those kinds of things. And I would be very interested in a version of sneakers where people are not making their decisions off of fear. Because I think Ben Kingsley is a sympathetic character. I think he starts with the right intention,
Yeah.
and then I think things happen to him and decisions get made out of fear instead of maybe rationality, whatever you want to call it. But Martin Bishop, of course, makes decisions based on fear, and all these characters have fear as part of their motivator. And anyway, it's not something necessarily to talk about, but I love a
Well,
world where, and you and I could talk about fear probably for a substantially longer amount of time, but um,
oh
I
man. Okay.
yeah.
Well, look, well, as we said, this is going to be an ongoing conversation. I mean, let me I'll end this with this
Let's
because
do that.
you'll love it. Um this turns out to have been a like momentous moment. God, terrible. A momentous moment.
Alliteration.
Um uh no, like a really significant event in my life was when David Lynch came to UCSD in 2005. And I
Okay.
saw him, he's doing his transcendental meditation tour, just trying to get
Yeah.
everybody to get into meditating. And I asked actually a good question. I'm very proud of this. Because a lot of people, they get up to ask questions. They're like, I loved Dune, actually.
Yeah, I know. They're like, is Sting really like that in person? Yeah, kind of stuff. Yeah.
um, and for what it's worth, I'm pro David Lynch's Dune,
Oh,
despite its flaws.
it's not a terrible movie at all.
Yeah. Anyway, it absolutely is in some ways, but I love it.
Well, all movies back then. Give David Lynch
Yeah.
today's, filmmaking capabilities, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, anyway, what I asked, I said, look, I get it. I think I can understand why meditation would be useful to you as a director or like as a filmmaker because you get to tap into creativity and things like that. But like, how does it help you as an executive, like as a director who's making decisions? And he said, he's like, if you try to do anything in life, it's going to be hard and you're going to be overwhelmed and you will experience fear. And if you give into the fear, you will become a sellout. And he said that. He's like, you'll be a sellout. And he's like, meditation helps get rid of the fear.
It's a great one.
It's
Fantastic.
the best. Like, I'm just like, thank you, David Lynch. Like, I'm such a blessing to have gotten that like directly from him. I didn't talk to him after anything like that. There's like a million people there. But anyway, rest in peace. And 100%. Like, this is not where I expected today's conversation to go. It's very good. So thank you. That like, we are confronted with all of this information. We're confronted with forces that are trying to manipulate how we see the world. And like, it does boil down to us making decisions about what we're going to pay attention to. And I think, and fighting fear. Because you don't want to make decisions based out of fear. There's something in you that you can, that's better. So go ahead.
Well, no, like, I was aligning with you and saying that I think what we're told is the antidote for fear is more data.
Yeah.
And I think the answer is, and you and I both, I think, have experienced this in our life. More data is never bad, but I still got to step away from the data to understand what the rationale is: fear, joy, anger, despair, whatever. I have to understand what the perspective is I have of it, and then I can come back and use the data more efficiently. And again, a lot of decisions I've made haven't been de novo data. It's data I've had in the past, and my brain has finally gone, if you would have listened to me, you would have used this data 5 years ago, but you were so involved in your little worldview. You know what I mean? So I really appreciate you adding that story, because I kind of get the sense that, when we do Borges, or in the next one we do, we'll probably end up in a very similar construct of meaning behind what that is. So I appreciate you being flexible and letting us talk very little about the movie and much more about our perspective of how we got to where we are. I mean, we're almost 50. Well, thank you for letting me join you. That was
of course.
And I look forward to the next one that we keep within the time we blow right past.
We'll do it again. All right, man. All right. I hope you enjoyed that. It was a lot of fun for me. It's, again, I think I say this a lot, but I'll just keep saying it. It's a real treat to be able to just have these long conversations with people. There just aren't many contexts for it. And so I hope you enjoyed listening in and felt like you were in on it. I'm really happy with like where this went, and that we were able to cover so much ground. And I think really pulling the threads that this movie surfaces or sort of reveals to us, and take them a lot further. Again, it was a remarkably prescient film, and also a really fun one. So I really hope you enjoyed this. The target for this coming month in April is to do Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I'm still finishing that up. I'll admit it's been a slog, and I want to get on with my life. But I'm also enjoying it. It's a very dense and involved book. So if you've read that, you can look forward to that. And anyway, hoping to line up some other interesting things for the summer. I really want to read the Odyssey and have some people on to talk about that. Maybe multiple episodes about the Odyssey. There's no coincidence that we're timing this with the release of the Nolan film. And if this sounds interesting to you, check the show notes, because JB is also on a podcast about the Odyssey, inspired also by, the forthcoming Christopher Nolan film. So look out for that and go check out the podcast. Anyway, thanks for listening. As always, our intro music is by Secret School. This song is called 3/10 of the Population by We. I'd love to hear from you. You can just write to me at jed@texontext.net. And let me know if you have ideas for books, guests, anything we can do. Got a big stack of books to get through, but I'm always open to suggestions. So thanks for listening. Like and subscribe and give us reviews and all that stuff. Later.